the 49ers and George Kittle agreed to a massive record extension in April. And Rob's here. Steph's going to join us in a little bit. I'm sure we'll have some more thoughts about the 49ers draft class. Stick around right after this. I'm Jason Aponte. That's Rob Stats Guerrero filling in for Steph. Steph will be joining us. This is the Bully Ball Podcast, the only podcast that believes that 100 Trent Williams can beat a gorilla.
I don't know where I come down on that whole thing. If you're telling me that the 100 guys just have to attack the gorilla, I pick the gorilla easily. But if the 100 guys can actually think of a plan and use their brain, then I pick the 100 people.
In no sort of physical altercation am I going to pick a man or 100 men over a gorilla. These gorillas would snap these men in half with a grin on their face, and you wouldn't be able to physically hurt them at all.
I completely agree. Steph Sanchez is here. What's up, Steph?
Yo. Hey,
Here
sorry. I misread that text. I thought
Sure
it was just
did.
I thought it was just the end time that was changing, but
You sure did, Steph.
also
it's fine.
It didn't help, Rob, that your email went to my junk folder. So
we got beef inside the Gold Standard Podcast Network building. But Rob, thanks for stepping in, and I'm glad that we had that talk about 100 Trent Williams against a gorilla, because I do think 100 Trent Williams stand a far better chance than 100 normal men, right?
Can I just say one thing real quick before you send me away?
Uh-oh.
That is, I just want to admit, I already admitted it on Twitter. I'm going to admit it again, just so everybody can be satisfied. I had predicted 2 years ago that George Kittle would not figure out his contract, would not finish his contract with the 49ers. I was wrong. Okay. I was wrong. I'm just saying it publicly. I know I'm the first person to ever get a prediction wrong in sports. I'll be it's fine, but I'm just admitting it, everyone, so everyone could be satisfied. Okay, that's it.
You're good, Rob. Honestly, look, the internet never forgets, right? And that's just what I've learned when I've done my little, content creation journey. And it's just the internet never forgets. When you get something right, no one's going to run and tell you, hey, you were right. When you get something wrong, everyone's going to remind you till the end of time. But speaking of getting things right, Steph Sanchez and I talked about the George Kittle extension last Tuesday. And if you didn't check that episode out, we both predicted the highest contract ever given to a tight end. Well, fast forward to next Tuesday, and that's exactly what happened. Steph, real quick, because Rob has the clip so we can run it back and we can prove that we were actually ahead of the curve on this one. What are your initial thoughts of the 49ers getting a deal done in April and not waiting around the training camp?
Tremendous vibes, right? I mean, I think we all feel great about it. The thing that struck me the most is that the 49ers got this done shortly after he reported to the building. Now, is that because things were already in a good enough place that, they were just able to hash out the details? And is that why he showed up? Because, hey, he's like, most of this, all the parameters are already in a good spot. I feel good about showing up. Or was it able to get done because, he showed up, we're able to hash out these final details? Could be a little bit of both, right? But I think one of the things I mentioned last week was, is Brock Purdy showing up before his deal getting done? Does that set a new precedent of, hey, if these guys show up, the 49ers want these players to show up and in good faith will get a deal done. I think that's the kind of trend that they want this to go in. And I think with Brock Purdy, the reports have been positive lately, although that hasn't been done yet. But we feel good about where it's going. And for Kittle, as soon as he shows up shortly after, they get a deal done. So I think it could potentially just start this new trend. And of course, I think that's the communication that the 49ers, want it to go in. And, I don't know. I think they do want players to believe, if you just show up, we'll get this done.
100%. And he's been working out with Brock Purdy. So I'm sure that they're sitting there and saying, hey man, I'm not going anywhere. Let's get this done. I'm gonna be here. Like essentially, Kittle's got a good idea of that. But Rob has the clip of last Tuesday's bully ball with us discussing. So just so we can kind of take a victory lap real quick. Rob, go for it.
Too worried about it right now in April.
Yeah, Kittle definitely is going to have the highest tight end contract when this gets done, right? Like when this gets done, just based on when you look at how close he was to the top of the receiving list of tight ends on like 30 less catches and like 50 less targets than Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. Hey man, when we get it right, we better pat ourselves on the back because nobody else is going to say anything about it, right? But it's funny.
Rob's certainly not going to be right about it, so it's good for one of us to be right.
You had to throw that in there, didn't you? My goodness,
I mean, everyone else is taking jabs. We might as well too, right?
Look at this man. I would never do that to the boss, man. I never.
Oh, he kicked me out.
He kicked you out.
He kicked me out.
Look, we talked about him just barely getting the number over, right? And the numbers came out today: 19.1, Trey McBride 19. That is exactly what happened when Trent Williams was up. He just wanted a little bit more. But Mike Florio put out a little report saying that the last year of the deal is funny money to make it that way. Who cares? I think bottom line, Steph, this is going to be a 10-year 49er. This is going to be a person that goes on the wall. And this is a Hall of Fame tight end. And he's going to, for all intents and purposes, retire a 49er. That is, you just said the vibes are immaculate. For it coming off an offseason where almost everything was horrible last offseason, and then the beginning of this offseason with all the mass exodus, after the draft and this, and then it sounds like obviously the Fred Warner thing is going to get done because he talked about it at the press conference, and he was, hey, listen, I get paid plenty. I'll be fine. He's not going to make any noise. And it sounds like Brock's going to be there. My God, the only other thing that we can wait for that's probably better news is Brandon Ayuk's going to show up week 1 as well, too. Like the vibes are all the way around, right, Steph?
Yeah, it really is. And just like one final thought on just the numbers, right? In APY, it's 0.1 million over Trey McBride. So like optics, that's great. Also total value, 0.4 million over Trey McBride's. But the big difference, Jay, is the guarantees, 40 million guarantees at signing. And of course, once we get the final numbers of this contract, like the full guarantees of all that, I'm sure, Kittle will be far ahead of his peers, and he deserves to be, right? And so, yeah, the vibes are indeed immaculate with the 49ers this year, it seems. And, even with the draft, right? Like I didn't feel like going into the draft, it was like this huge, immense amount of pressure for the 49ers. It felt like they were excited and they were looking forward to like these changes and revamping their defense. I don't think they looked at it as this like, oh my God, so much pressure. I'm fearing this draft. That I got so much dread. Like you didn't get that sense at all. Jed York is having fun out here, hinting at picks on Twitter. I get a really good vibe on the team overall. You got John Lynch talking about players, like they got almost all players in the building for the voluntary period, which I think is huge. Look, the voluntary period doesn't mean much of anything, but if you have almost your whole team there already, I think it speaks to players wanting to be in the building at this point in time. And you don't get that every year. I think the fact that they missed the playoffs last year, guys were able to get ample amount of rest and they feel ready to go and put their all into 2025. And I think that's a good sign. Once this Brock Purdy deal gets done too, it'll just feel like a huge weight is lifted off of everyone's shoulders, I think, in that locker room, which is big because we didn't have that even walking into week 1 last year, right, with the Brandon Ayuk situation. So it'll just be nice to go into the season feeling light, I think, is what the 49ers will feel.
I think the 49ers understand, and this is another point that we made on last Tuesday, to reiterate, this team cannot start slow. You're going to come out of the gates and you have to have everybody ready and there's going to be no sort of acclimation period. I think under Kyle Shanahan, there's been a few seasons where they've opened up hot. 2019 comes to mind, obviously, when they won all those games in a row to start the season. But there can't be this whole like lying in the weeds, oh, they'll get it together type of thing. First of all, the schedule right now, based on last year's winning percentage, is right in your favor. But Kittle's got to be there. Brock's got to be there. All these guys have to be there to start and get everything rolling, right? Training camp, I don't need you guys to do anything. I don't need to see Christian McCaffrey in preseason. I don't need to see George Kittle. I don't need to see Trent Williams. Maybe a little bit of Brock. That's fine. The rest of the guys can get some playing time. But they need to get this thing rolling. And them doing this in April really shows me that I believe, again, based on vibes, that they are trying to get this rolling in the right direction right off the bat. Let's have a normal offseason where everybody shows up to all phases and everybody is participating and everything as well too. Like, we understand some players are longer in the tooth. So again, we don't need to see them in preseason. I don't want to see Trent Williams bubble wrap him until week 1. Same thing with Christian McCaffrey. Literally put those guys in the chamber, the chamber with the mask or whatever, and get them and just unleash them in week 1. But this team needs to get going, and they need to like come out of the gates firing. And if they do that, then things get easier. It's much harder to dig yourself out of a hole than it is to start fast. And I know that's not really groundbreaking, right there by saying that.
It isn't groundbreaking, but I think this team had the bad habit of feeling like, we'll figure it out because we always do, and it bit them in the ass, So I think hopefully they learned a valuable lesson in you can't always start slow and pick yourself back up and dig yourself out of the hole at the end of it. And so, yeah, I think there is going to be a little bit of urgency and just high energy, but I need to see it particularly from the offense, Jay. Like, there's going to be so many new pieces, so many rookies playing on that defense that I think my expectations for them right off the bat are going to be a little bit tempered. Like, yes, we're excited that Salah's back, but he needs to reel these guys in. And I think that's going to take some time, So yeah, your leadership in that room, Lenore, Warner, Bosa, like all those guys need to help Salah to kind of, get them off and running. But I think my expectations there will be a little tempered. And I think we see this defense improve as the season goes on. And then also, like, it'll be interesting to see what the schedule looks like to start the season. And as, Rob mentioned in our private chat, the release comes out May 14th for that schedule. So
Rob's
we know
favorite
the opponents.
day.
We know the opponents, but we're as far as where the gauntlets are going to be, which, obviously the 49ers have a really easy schedule this year, but when's the tough part of their schedule? Is it going to be at the beginning? Is it going to be at the end? Hopefully it's towards the end where, you feel a little bit better about them, having that momentum from the first couple of weeks. Cause yeah, I'm not expecting the defense to be, rolling on all cylinders out the gate.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, and I'll read Tyler's comment. Shout out to Tyler, man. This year's team, I feel, in a way, took a step back and reflected on what happened last year and how embarrassing it was. And now I have a newfound perspective in being prepared at all times. 100%. I wrote about this today, and this season is Kyle Shanahan's season. And what I mean by that is you're going to go into this season with a defense that is up front going to be largely rookies, so you're going to have to take the ups and downs and the bumps and bruises. But how do you offset a defense that at times may, let a play up here or there? It's your offense. So this is Kyle Shanahan's season. This one right here, meaning you have to get this offense to perform at the level. It was top 5 last year in moving the ball. I don't think that we're necessarily worried about the scheme. I think the idea that the scheme has been figured out is a little bit overblown. Just a little bit, right? No Christian McCaffrey, you're still able to move the football between the 20s, but touchdowns. And now this is Kyle Shanahan's season, right? If the 49ers are going to make it back to the playoffs, if they're going to go in a deep run, it's Kyle Shanahan and his offense that is going to have to do the heavy lifting this year. Certainly, the 49ers defense has improved. No questions asked. And the run defense has improved. How could it not? It was so poor last season. But to offset the bumps and bruises and the potential pitfalls of having defensive rookies play, your offense with Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, right? Jawan Jennings, DeMarcus Robinson, Ricky Pearsall, Jacob Cowing. You've got to find a way to keep this offense afloat, and the offense has to do what the defense can't do at times and help lift this team. So this is Kyle Shanahan's year. I'm looking at you, buddy. This is your year, right? Because if your offense is what they say it is, if your scheme is what they say it is, if your scheme is what it's been and how the 49ers have performed, the 49ers have put up points with lesser weapons than they have right now, then Kyle Shanahan needs to come through and deliver this year.
Yeah, and I think he knows it, right? I think with the whole like revamping of the defense and barely any changes to the offense, I think it does tell you that there's a level of confidence in that building in Kyle Shanahan's ability to be able to make it work with who he has, because who he has is pretty good. I mean, we're expecting Trent Williams to be healthy. We're expecting Christian McCaffrey to be back healthy. And so with those guys, we know those are the game changers. And I think they do feel that last season, what hurt them as a team, yes, the offense did underperform in some areas. We talked about the red zone all season, right? Penalties, but ultimately the defense is kind of what didn't help. So I think if they get that figured out, the offense is going to have to be the thing that lifts this team up through Kyle Shanahan, through the guys that they have on that side of the ball. And I think we all feel confident that that can be done, right? I mean, we got to. It has to. Yeah. It has to work out. So yeah, I'm excited to see what this team looks like. Little bit different. I'm excited to see all these like rookies get some playing time, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And yeah, I think the vibes are going to be riding high.
Considering how it was last season, considering how it was early this season, after the draft and this George Kittle extension and the promise of Fred Warner and possibly Brock Purdy, which I think both of those things get done as well too, probably sooner than later. I don't think we're going to get these that go into training camp at this point, right, Steph?
It has to be soon. Like, okay, right. Remember when Dre Greenlaw signed with the Broncos, and then Kyle Shanahan was asked about it, and he's like, when you're doing 20 different things, like we can't
woe is me, dude.
Yeah, it's like apparently football teams can't do 20 things at once and expect to be able to do one thing right. But yeah, I think now that they've gotten a lot of things done, the draft is done, you got Kittle done, guys are in the building. I think based on that logic, they should be able to get this done quick and quicker with Purdy than we have seen in the past. So now I'm expecting that this gets done here very soon.
Yeah, 2 more 49ers are going to get extended. Fred Warner, I think, is absolutely a slam dunk. There's no way they can let him go. I mean, so much of what they do on defense is based around the idea that you have Fred Warner on the defense. And then Brock Purdy. And then the vibes will continue to be good. And then, all we need to wait for is good injury news for Brandon Ayuk and hopefully good injury news for Malik Mustafa. And I think that's a perfect way to pivot into the draft. Look, the draft's been over since Saturday. What else can Steph and I say about this draft class that hasn't been said already, right? But I do kind of want to start with the philosophy of the 49ers as opposed to the consensus board, right? Mm-hmm. For better or worse, the 49ers have a board, there's a consensus board, and the 49ers don't care about the consensus board. They have their guys, and they go and they draft them. Now, in one regard, you'll end up with Fred Warner in the third, a little bit higher than people would have thought. Boom, doesn't matter. Best linebacker in football. So who cares where you took him? And then there's other times where you'll draft somebody else completely too high, and they don't pan out at all. So for a team that goes into their draft process with high level of variance, boom or bust, I would say, this draft felt like a very much floor draft. Like, we have needs. We have needs right now. We're going to address them, and we're going to put a floor on this with the chance of a ceiling. You get that same sort of feeling, Steph?
That's the exact feeling I got from the day 3 picks, because a lot of them were kind of that, oh, like that was a little early. And even, Nick Martin, Upton Stout, you can make that same kind of argument as well. But you look at those guys and you're not really scratching your head as to why the 49ers would like them, or that they feel that those players have upside. So, I think all of those players have upside. And then you look at players like Jordan James, for example. Like, he, to me, is a high floor player. He's not like this mega star running back. It's not a sexy running back pick that, maybe we'd have expected from Kyle Shanahan in a deep running back class. But he's very good at pass protection. He's good at short yardage situations. He's very slippery. He's not gonna, be the guy that's gonna be a home run hitter in this offense, right? He doesn't have that big play ability, but he provides a high floor, because just the fact that his pass pro alone is as good as it is, and he takes care of the football. He didn't have any fumbles in his career. High floor, right? So in that sense, it's safe, even if it is considered a reach. And the other thing I want to say about the whole reach thing, you talk about the consensus. Obviously, we know the 49ers don't care about consensus. I don't know why we're still surprised about this. Like,
I know
they do this every year. Like, why are we surprised? They have a process, and sometimes that process works, sometimes it doesn't, because you do see some of those reaches, and a lot of those have not panned out. So I think that's where the argument really comes from. But look, the consensus comes from draft analysts. It comes from mock drafts. It comes from people who look at all 300 plus draft eligible players and put all of them in one list. The 49ers had 200 or so draftable grades on players. And so take out 100 players from that consensus big board list and shrink it down to 200 players. And so you're going to have, and it's not the top 200 players that are on the consensus that are going to be the 49ers 200 draftable players, So they have other parameters in which they look at that they value more than, the consensus and other draft analysts do, which draft analysts and even us fans, people who do the mock drafts, they only have a certain amount of context as to players. And usually it's mostly just the film that they're looking at. How does this... Wow, we got a new one. We got consensus now. So really we're just looking at, how this player performs in any scheme that they can join. Then the 49ers shrink it down to who fits our scheme, who fits the characters that we want to have in the building, like all those things. So they have so much that they got to filter through in order to determine like who's on their list. And so that's why, especially on day 3, it gets wonky all across the board, where you're seeing guys get picked that you didn't even ever see in a mock draft, right? And why is that? Because teams are looking at different things that us fans, draft analysts, are not even considering. Like, so that's the one pushback I'd give to the reach thing. The 49ers have reached on players that have not worked out. That has not been great. I agree with that. It's awful. But, they have a process, and at times it has worked out for them. The early returns on 2024, look incredible, right? Some of those I think were considered reaches. So, let's see how 2025 pans out. But I agree with you, Jay. I think there is a high floor even for the guys that they quote unquote reached on.
Right. That's the thing, Stefan. And I'm glad that you said that. And we've talked about it, is us as amateur draft analysts and fans, we fall in love with a player based on what we see on film and what we can project for the vision of the player and the scheme fit. It's clear that teams get turned off when people are in interviews. What type of player, what type of person am I bringing into this building? And that's the part that we will never know. We will never know that, because we're not going to be privy to those interviews. we have to just go off of what we see on film. But it's clear. When I asked John Lynch in 2024 at the Combine about best player available and drafting for need, he said, we just like drafting good players. I think that is all you really need to know about whatever the consensus is. The 49ers have their board, they have their characteristic personal traits, they have their football traits, and all of that stuff has to match. Now, Rob, if you could put the draft picks back up. Now, I think the 49ers draft strategy is having as many Jordan players as they can, Jordan James, Jordan Watkins, Jordan Elliott, to replace Jordan Mason as well, too. But, all right, look, serious note. Let's go through all of them, one by one. Obviously, Mykel Williams is the Pierre des Resistance, like the bell of the ball, right? Because you're pick a left.
Well, hold on. Did you just speak French?
Oh yeah, listen, I can get in my French bag and everything as well too. I'm cultured. I'm learned. Mykel Williams.
I was on Duolingo.
Yeah. Mykel Williams, edge setter, but with a chance to flourish as a pass rusher. Your floor.
Yeah.
Your run defense is already better. Your floor. And that's a starter. So that's one. But your ceiling is what you can unlock with Mykel Williams. Chris Kosarik, I'm looking at you, pal. I need you to develop a draft pick. I don't need you to develop somebody who's already been in the league, like Omenihu and Key and Kerry Hyder. No, I need you to get something out of a draft pick. And here we go. That's what this draft is. Mykel Williams sets the edge. Run defense already better because it can't be worse. And you have the ceiling and for massive growth. What do you think, Steph?
I loved this pick, and I think obviously they did too. I did think he was going to be going in the top 10 picks. They did too. So I think this is a huge win for them. And speaking of the floor, yeah, you know right away that he was going to be able to get on the field via, him being able to set the edge. That was my concern with Shamar Stewart, right? Like, I don't think that was a part of his game that was as polished as Mykel Williams is right now. You add on the fact that Shamar Stewart was also a raw pass rusher, but I still even think in that aspect, Mykel Williams has more to offer there immediately than Shamar Stewart. So I always saw Mykel as being the safer option of the two, the higher floor option of the two. And so that's why Mykel made a lot of sense for the 49ers for me. And yeah, obviously the 49ers agreed, right? So I think also the plan for him is on maybe those passing downs, kick him inside, have him beat those guards, which he has proven he can do as well, and let him figure out the rest as far as rushing from the edge. That may come at a later time, or maybe he'll always, kick inside on obvious passing situations. I don't know. But again, it's a high floor. They have a clear vision for him, and he's immediately going to be able to improve this run defense.
Yes. And I do want to also preface the fact that Mykel Williams can be a guy that they move around a little bit. I don't think he's going to be hand in the dirt over a guard, but I do think that there's going to be ways for Robert Saleh to create pressure while he develops as a pass rusher by maybe putting Yetur Gross-Matos out there on the outside and using him on stunts and getting around. It's going to be a little bit creative when it comes to how they pass rush. It's not just going to be straight up rush 4 like it was in 2019 when the 49ers had such a dominant upfront line. But Alfred Collins, now floor, again, big body, wide 9. You need him to hold the blocks, everything, right? Guy's mean. He's huge. This is perfect because it's a cascading effect for the second level defenders and how they run defend. You get the big boys up front. They occupy the blocks, and those little crevices that you can get in, your smaller but faster linebackers, and that takes us into the third pick, Fred Warner, Nick Martin, whoever it is, D. Winters, can shoot those gaps and blow up run plays. The problem was last year is the big boys up front were getting pushed around, and those crevices were canyons. And when you're at the second level, you've got a running back who's already got a full head of steam and hasn't even been breathed on. And that's when you end up with these large gains, and you're wondering why the run defense is there. Holding the block, disrupting, and then allowing these little gaps where a running back has to look and decide at least a little bit longer where he wants to go, that's where your linebackers attack. Alfred Collins fits that perfectly.
Yeah, Alfred Collins was my favorite pick of the draft, in case anyone didn't know that already. I keep saying that, but it's really because not only can he absorb the double teams, Jay, like he can split them too. So he's not just going to be this guy that's just a body to clog up space. He's going to be aggressive. He's going to get those tackles for losses. So he's going to be able to improve this defense as well. Also, those 35-inch arms, that's insane, right? That's something Michael and Collins have in common, 34-plus inch arms, in which you're not going to see a lot of missed tackles. Another thing with Collins is that he gets his hands up there and he's able to bat passes down, 6 batted passes in 2024. So he could offer a little bit more as a pass rusher. I think that's something that, we could maybe see improve in his game.
That's your ceiling from the floor.
Exactly. Immediately, we're going to be able to see the 49ers defense improve on first and second down. And that was the whole issue, right? I did one of my reaction shows with KP, and he was like, they kind of did it backwards last year where, they improved their secondary and all that, but they weren't even getting to those passing down situations, those favorable passing down situations. Now, like you really you're going back to your foundation of stopping teams on first and second down, and then getting into those favorable spots where you could really pin your ears back and do what you do best. And you have the secondary already that, is in a good position for those situations. But they're getting back to foundation, and yes, high floor. I think immediately with these first 2 picks, like the defense improved dramatically.
You can't rush the passer until you stop the run. Mm-hmm. Right? Stop the run. Let's have some fun. I know that somebody said that on the 49ers. That's not my saying, anything like that. But again, you don't have to fall in love with the player, right? Because we all had our draft crushes. Trust me, at 75, I wanted the 49ers to run the pickup for Jalen Noel. I'm just like, Jalen Noel, please. But it doesn't matter, because once that goes out the window, you start to see the vision for the player. Now, 3rd pick, Nick Martin. Admittedly, I didn't know much about Nick Martin. So when I did my instant reaction, I just said, I defer to the 49ers. I've got to dig in a little bit further. And immediately the first few comps that were thrown out there were, he's Dre Greenlaw. Okay, well, I want to dial that back a little bit. I see the characteristics in the intensity of play. I see the characteristics in the aggression that needs to be controlled. I see the characteristics in a guy that sometimes overruns his tackler, which is why, which is why his missed tackle rate is so high. But the 49ers, again, going back to consensus board, they chose Nick Martin based on his 2023 season. And that's like, it was almost like he didn't even have the 2024 season where he had the injury to his knee. They based it on the 2023 season. I do want to say this in regards to how Robert Saleh is going to create pressure. Don't be shocked if Nick Martin beats out D. Winters, by the way, because D. Winters isn't going anywhere, right? Like, I think this is high capital that you've invested in Nick Martin, but they're still going to give D. Winters every single opportunity to win this job and prove that he can stay healthy for, 16, 17 games. But if the 49ers want to utilize what makes Nick Martin very good, it could be on pass rushing plays where, you get everything blocked up, but you send him through one of those small crevices and he blows things up because he is fast enough to play that way. And in 2023, that's what he excelled at. What do you think about this pick, Steph?
Yeah, no, I like this one too. My immediate reaction was, oh, this is a little early. Like, I wasn't expecting Nick Martin to go this early, regardless of the team, right? But again, that came from me being able to get him in the 7th round of mock drafts. So it didn't bother me too much, but I liked Nick Martin as a player. He was at the Senior Bowl. He was at the Combine. For anyone worried about him missing, the rest of the 2024 season, I think I don't have any concerns because he was able to participate in all of the off-season activities and quite well, right? He ran a 4.53 at the Combine, so he's back up to speed. He was a team captain at OK State. The thing is also, people point out he's a little undersized. Well, I think that's where the NFL is going, where you need guys on defense that could keep up with all the speed that's entering the league on offenses now. And you know, honestly, there were a few undersized linebackers in this class, and I kind of feel like that's the next trend that we see with linebackers. Obviously, it doesn't bother the 49ers. And we never know, like, guys can put on weight once they get into an NFL program. That happens all the time. So we probably see that with Nick Martin, but he has the speed. He has the vision to work through traffic. One thing that, you know, John Lynch, and even when you talk when the Tariq Ahmad and Josh Williams, RJ Gillen talk to the media as well, the thing that they always say is he fits what we're looking for. And that's kind of like when I was watching linebackers, he was someone who I pegged as he fits what the 49ers look for. They like linebackers to just play with their hair on fire. Like, they don't always have to be going the right way. They're okay if, like, in college they're overshooting, you know, who they're supposed to be tackling, but they like guys that play with that energy, and they figure, hey, we can kind of reel them in once they get into our system and be a little better in that sense. But you have to have, like, you know, that one switch to flip, and I think Nick Martin has that. So I did really enjoy this pick.
Yeah, again, you'd rather the player be over aggressive because you can't teach aggression. You can't make someone aggressive. You know, if he's already there, then just reel him in. Okay. Speaking of the Senior Bowl, this pick I was very familiar with because of the Senior Bowl. And, you know, I tend to just watch wide receivers and corners because that's my passion. I know everybody wants the big boys and all that stuff. I'll be honest with you. I'm not as well versed in offensive line as I am with what a wide receiver and cornerback should do. But Upton Stout was somebody who was winning these one-on-one reps in the Senior Bowl. And those things are not designed for the defensive back. If anything, the defensive back is very much expected to lose all of these. If you're a wide receiver and you're losing consistently these one-on-ones that are designed for you, we've got bigger issues with the wide receiver. Nobody really dings the cornerback when they're not, you know, winning these things that are not designed for them. But Stout was doing that. And immediately when I was watching him, you're looking at a K'Wan Williams type. Again, what's the type? Saleh wants big guys in the middle. DJ Jones, that's exactly what he's looking for. Those types. Upton Stout, inside. K'Wan Williams, right? He's trying to get back to what the 49ers were in 2019 with guys with similar traits. Again, you don't have to know the player, love the pick, but you can see the vision. So you see exactly what they're going for right here. And I think he's a day one starter. So if we're doing the tally for day one starters, Mykel Williams, Alfred Collins, Upton Stout, possibly Nick Martin. We'll see how that goes, you know, because I said that they're going to try that with D Winters. And then CJ West right after. You've got 4 starters out of your first 5 picks. If this was Howie Roseman, the national media would be absolutely glazing him. Like with like nonstop. Now, some of this is the necessity of these players to start, but I don't think we think it's a charity case for these guys to be starting. These are good football players that are going to be starting day one for the 49ers, regardless of their bumps and bruises, and Upton Stout is one of them.
And let's not forget, the 49ers did bring in a lot of secondary players in free agency. So to your point, no, it isn't like, oh, we drafted him, so he's immediately going to start. These guys still have to earn their spots. And I think, you know, that is true with Upton Stout as well. But I agree. I think he has a space at that nickel spot he has an opportunity. You can keep Lenore on the outside. When I watched him, like, because honestly, like, I was at the Senior Bowl, but he wasn't really someone I was, you know, tuned into and watching a whole lot at the Senior Bowl. So really, it wasn't until the 49ers picked him that I got into his tape. And immediately what you see is someone who is more than willing. I wouldn't even say willing. This is someone who wants to be involved in the run defense. Yep. Like, he loves it. He has a nose for the play. He wants to be in there. And it doesn't matter if the play's happening across the field from him. He will run, and he has the speed, Jay. He had a 4.44 speed to get his ass over there and get involved on that tackle. He can chase plays down. They said that Warren Ball, the scout that scouted him in that area, said he had a heart of a lion. He's feisty. You see that immediately. And so I love when, you can kind of connect all these like adjectives that people are using to describe a player, or is it verb? Sorry, I'm not good at English, but
I think it's adjective. I think it's adjective is descriptive, right? Yeah, verbs are action.
Thank you, Jay.
Don't quote me.
All these words that people use to describe a player, and then you see the film and it starts jumping out immediately. I love when that happens, and that is exactly what happened when I watched Upton Stout. You don't have to search and watch 100 plays until you see the one play that shows you that one quality. You see it from play one, and I love that about Upton Stout. I thought this was a great pick.
Yep, we got a super chat from Jeb. Lions draft talent Isaac Tesla is a sleeper pick. Didn't understand why they took him over somebody that I really liked. I have to look at the draft class again. I just didn't get why he went over somebody else, but good for the Lions. I mean, that's fine. Again, I'm not really buying stock in Tesla. All right. We got about 3 more minutes left, right? Because we got a hard stop. Rob, if you could put up the draft picks again one more time, we're going to do a little bit of a lightning round. CJ West, big boy in the middle. He starts right away. Yes or no, Steph?
Yeah, I think so. I think the idea is to have Collins and West starting.
Correct. Jordan Watkins, he's already in the doghouse. But punt returner. And I love the idea of them addressing punt and kick returners because they might have the crazy idea that I had that Jacob Cowie needs to just focus on route running and not catching the football.
Yeah, and Kyle Shanahan did talk about Watkins' route running as well, so he has an opportunity to get on the field, right away. I think it's a little harder for some of these offensive players. They have a lot of depth at a lot of these spots, so these guys, it'll be a little bit harder to see them getting playing time, but. Yeah, Watkins, I think, could be someone who gets some opportunity, especially early in the season, because we don't know what's going to happen with Brandon Ayuk when he's going to be back. I think, like, out of these day 3 picks, Jay, like a couple of my favorites. I think Jordan James, like we said, is of all the running backs that they've drafted. I think this one has the opportunity to be just as good as some of the UDFAs. We always talk about the UDFAs, like outplaying the guys that they actually draft.
Corey Kiner.
I think who I like. I think Kiner's nice. I think there's some qualities that fit well for both of them where they can make guys miss. Jordan James, I think I could see being like the short yardage back because he could make guys miss. He's a little slippery. He doesn't have that top end speed. Like I said, he's not going to be the home run hitter for this offense, but he could be someone that can come in, make guys miss, move the chains. He was phenomenal in the red zone for Oregon. So I could see him being very much like a role player. Marquise Siegel is going to be someone who he's going to get an opportunity just off of Mustafa, not being available to start the season. Very versatile player. So I'm excited to see him. And then Connor Colby, I think also is going to get an opportunity to compete.
How are you just going to jump over? Are you just going to jump over? Look, first of all, 2 Indiana Hoosiers are San Francisco 49ers, by the way. Huge W. But stop playing with Curtis Rourke and talk about him.
Where is he on the depth chart? That's my thing, Jay.
The emergency third quarterback. Come on.
This is my issue with that pick. I know the 49ers are always going to pick a quarterback, and so this year it was Curtis Rourke. I do understand the high floor in the Maple Missile. Yes,
that's a fire nickname.
It really is. It really is, and I do understand why Kyle Shanahan would like him, why the 49ers would like him.
Such a Kyle quarterback.
Such a Kyle quarterback. I have concerns about how he's going to be able to get an opportunity on the field. I think at the very least, when he's healthy, he could probably, supplant Mordecai, right? But the 49ers also have Mac Jones, who they signed to a 2-year contract, not just a 1 year. And is Rourke gonna redshirt, his rookie season? I don't know. I don't
think so. He's probably redshirted off the ACL.
He's already 25 years old, Jay.
Hey, I love that. What's wrong with? No, we're not doing the ages thing or whatever because we like a lot of people are like, why are you paying a 31-year-old tight end? It's because he's the best in the world, pal. 25 years old, coming out of college. I'm not gonna poo-poo that as well too. But I did want to kind of go back to real quick. Jordan Watkins, I do think that at times if he's going to be on the field, he can play X and he might be able to push Jawan Jennings back into the big slot position that he's so excelled at. Again, Jawan Jennings is going to start at X, but if there's certain times where you can get him in that big slot position again, that's only advantageous for Jawan Jennings. Jordan James feels like a Jordan Mason replacement right off the bat. Same type of player. Jordan James is a little bit faster, but the same type of player, sees it, hits the hole. Marcus Siegel is a free safety that I believe will be able to roam around and allow, when Malik Mustafa comes back, to roam around himself in the box and play a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage because he has the speed to be a center fielder, much more of a free safety than a strong safety. Curtis Rock, third emergency quarterback. Connor Colby, this is really interesting because first team all Big Ten, third team all Big Ten the year prior. Excellent at zone blocking. But I think we assume that Ben Barch is going to be the left guard that's starting. But I think Connor Colby being here allows them to move Burford over to be Trent Williams' backup. So while you're worried about the depth, Burford was a left tackle in college. He's going back to his natural position. And you have somebody that potentially pick 249 that if all the things break right at training camp, he could start. He can start. Again, we're talking about another starter. And if you're talking about insane value, pick 249 to find a starting left guard. Come on, Steph.
Yeah, I think he's going to be able to compete at that spot. I don't know if I have as much confidence that he's going to get it just because the 49ers are tough. Like it takes a lot for them to start rookies. Dominic Pooney only got that opportunity because a bunch of guys were hurt ahead of him. But, I like Colby and I like the upside. I mean, that scheme in Iowa in general, I think, is a well-coached team, especially when it comes to run blocking. They take that so seriously. He has a ton of experience, 54 games played through his 4-year career there. Very athletic. He offers you versatility. He could play. He could be the swing guard if nothing else, right? Just a backup swing guard, and then if anyone gets hurt, you can plug him in at each of those spots. So yes, at in the 7th round, that's great value. We all wanted to tackle, but they need some guards too. So Connor Colby at that point in the draft, I think, was good value.
Yeah, and Junior Bergen out of Montana, the only player who had more returns, yards per return in the Big Sky Conference history, some guy named Cooper Kupp. Does Junior Bergen make this team? I don't know, but it's clear the 49ers want to alleviate the stress of returning from Jacob Cowing with the Jordan Watkins pick, with this pick as well, too, for kick return. So the 49ers said, hey, you know what? We suck at run defense. We suck at special teams. Let's address it. I don't know how you could be really upset when the 49ers understood what they were bad at and then went ahead and addressed it. Now, if we could just get a kicker in here that can make kicks, we'd really be cooking with gas because we've got our franchise punter in Pat O'Donnell. That'll do it for this episode of Bully Ball on the Gold Standard Podcast Network.
Kicker, though. They signed a kicker after the draft.
Of course they did. Zane Gonzalez is available as well, too. Washington let him go. But that'll do it for this episode of Bully Ball Podcast on the Gold Standard Podcast Network. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell for whenever we go live. Follow Steph on Twitter at Steph49K. Follow me on Twitter at JasonAponte2103. It's been a fun episode. George Kittle got paid. Vibes are immaculate. For Steph, for Jay, we're out of here.
Peace.